Awesome. Well, and it sounds like you talk about the outer child. So this is the inner child are your feelings, and that takes place in the amygdala. We might not even be conscious of it, right?
Yes, your inner child just refers to everything that you're feeling and all of your needs, and some of them may be conscious and some of it may be unconscious. And by unconscious, it means that it can be triggered, so that it might not be something you might not be feeling hypersensitive. You're with a friend who's very supportive, but all of a sudden that friend dismisses something that you've said and kind of criticizes or judges what you've just explained. And out can come a very strong reaction, anger or hurt, because the feeling was unconscious. You weren't in touch with feeling hypersensitive, but there was an undercurrent that got triggered by what this friend said.
It's interesting. You also mention in the book, Susan, that if we take time, as we'll use relationships as an example because that's pretty universal, but people will feel abandonment in relationships, and then they'll take a long break from it thinking that they need time to heal, and then they go back into a relationship, and in that time span, their fears under the surface have actually grown. Yes,
because it turns out that fear incubates instead of dissipates over time. And this is something that has been demonstrated in laboratory experiments with animals of other species, that in the absence of taking care of an issue while we avoid it, the fear that we're avoiding tends to get worse. So what happens is we go through a breakup, and of course, at first we're gun-shy because it's so painful, and we're afraid to get hurt again. And we hear all of this advice from many people, therapists, friends, who say you must wait until you're completely healed before you start a new relationship. So we wait and we wait and we wait, but we still have fear and apprehension, and we still pine a little bit for the other person. And so we keep waiting, and what we discover is the longer we wait, after a certain period, the more resistant and afraid we get. So then when we try to get into another relationship, much to our surprise, we're having all of this insecurity and overreaction, and we feel, I didn't wait long enough. I'm not ready for a relationship. And our friends and therapists may even tell us that, well, you're not ready, you're overreacting. The truth is, maybe we waited even a little too long because we allowed the fear to incubate, and we allowed some of the fears and the feelings to fester because we didn't have a working laboratory, a new relationship to kind of work them out with.
But it doesn't sound like you're condoning the rebound, like break up with someone and then 2 days later you have a new partner.
No, I don't condone someone rushing out to replace a partner, because there is a natural grief process, and it's very important to go through the grief process and to really get in touch with all the feelings and work them through. But the part that I try to emphasize is that life itself is therapy, life itself is recovery, and a great place to begin to work on all of those feelings that are bound to come up. You've been hurt once, you're afraid it'll happen again, so there will be some more fear and anxiety when you approach a new relationship. But to work on it while opening up and reaching out to new people, and while being out there in the world, actually living your life and working through your fears rather than avoiding life and avoiding your fears.
There's another really important point that you make in the book that really resonated with me, and that's the issue of addiction to abandonment.
Well, there's a condition that I call abandonism, which is the addiction to abandonment, which is you are attracted only to unavailable people. And this is so prevalent that there are so many people who are attracted to the unavailable. And it even reaches the extreme that when somebody comes along who initially was unavailable, and then they become available, they decide, okay, you know what, I'm here for you. I'm opening my heart up. Let's be together. And that at that point, when you're a bandaholic, you tend to lose interest. And you say, well, this person has become boring, or I don't think there's no chemistry, or he or she just isn't the right person. And what really happened there is that the person became completely available and you lost interest because unbeknownst to you, you've become, sort of addicted, so to speak, to the insecurity. You've become addicted to the hard-to-get feeling of pursuit. And by addiction, I mean it's something you've become accustomed to in a way that in order for you to feel that you're interested in someone, in order to feel, quote-unquote, love towards someone or attraction, you need to feel simultaneously insecure.
Well, that's a bummer.
It's a bummer.
I actually just went through another breakup recently. I noticed, and you also talk about this in the book, that people who tend to distance themselves and have fear of, I believe the word is engulfment, are really just the other side of the same coin of fear of abandonment.
Yes.
How does that work?
People tend to swing on a pendulum between fear of abandonment and fear of engulfment. Now, there are some people, and I'm sure you've seen this out in the dating world, who tend more toward the fear of engulfment. As soon as somebody becomes too close to them, they feel the walls closing in and they lose interest and they want out. The people who have that kind of reaction very often are highly eligible people who others want, and they seem to be pursued by others because, of course, they're hard to get. Because the minute you try to hold on to them like a bar of soap, they're slippery, and they just pop out of your hand, and so they become the desired object, okay? So there are people who tend more toward fear of engulfment, where they can't stand somebody counting on them and needing them and falling in love with them, and it makes the walls close in. The opposite of that is fear of annihilation, fear of abandonment, where you're constantly afraid of being rejected. You're afraid yet another relationship is going to fall apart because the other person lost interest. But what's really ironic or almost hilarious is that many people have both. So they have a fear of abandonment when they like the person and the person is a little hard to get. But then they have fear of engulfment the minute the other person likes them. And I'm using the word like instead of love or attraction because at the beginning we like someone. We like them instead of not like them. We like them. That's how it starts. And when we like someone, when we actually, I like him or her, that is when we want the person, and that is often when we fear the abandonment because what if they don't like us back? So this pendulum can swing between fear of abandonment and then fear of engulfment, back and forth in a wild pattern that doesn't leave very much time in between where you're having an actual relationship which is in balance because the pendulum swings to the opposite extremes.